Algier out to the 35. This time London. He held on. He's on the slip through and score. Bates talking. Jesse Bates interception. 15-10. Drive home safely.
Falcons fans, what's up? And welcome back to Falcons Final Whistle. We have a victory to talk about. The Falcons beat the Saints 24-10. They're now 4-7 on the season, still in third place in the division, but who cares about those little details, right? You get a win over your biggest rival, and it's their biggest win since 2019. So we're going to break that all down in today's show. Here to do it with me, as always, is Tori McElhaney, who is not on location today, but that's actually, I think, a good thing because we get her for all four quarters. So how you doing, Tori?
I'm doing well. Yeah, this is the very first game since I've been with the Falcons that I've not traveled to. And that includes the COVID year. Like, that includes 2021. So this was a very different experience for me, sitting on the couch and watching the game and consuming it via the broadcast than how I've consumed every other Falcons game since I've been covering this team, which is like on location.
Well, because we value consistency, and I usually like to ask you, how was the atmosphere in the building? How was the atmosphere in the building today?
So I'm actually at my boyfriend's house, and we put up the Christmas tree earlier, and his roommate has a cat. So there was an instance halfway through the game where the cat did bite a light on the Christmas tree.
Oh my gosh.
It popped. The cat's fine. Everybody's fine. My boyfriend fixed the tree, so all the lights are good. But it was there for a few minutes. I was a little bit concerned about the Christmas cat debacle.
All right. So Tori's game day experience is giving feline festivities with a little bit of like ferocity in there. Okay.
Yeah.
I like it. I'm right there with you. Mine was filled with screaming babies and trying to work around it. So boy, I wish we had both been in the Superdome. That might have been
with Taryn. Taryn's there, and she did say she missed us, so that warmed my heart.
All right. Well, we're gonna get to the action because we're up against a little bit of a clock. We got 4 quarters, 6 minutes for each quarter. If you're new to this, so we're gonna start on our first quarter here, and really, I kind of think, Tori, we just gotta address like how big of a win this was at this point in time, right? You and I are both in the building every single week. And when you're on a 5-game losing streak, it's not the most fun. So talk to me from your perspective. How big of a victory is this for Atlanta?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to what we were even talking about in the Friday 5 episode, where we were like, this isn't a game that you go into being like you're playing for all the marbles. There's playoff implications on the line. Like, no, this is a 3-win Atlanta Falcons team playing a 2-win New Orleans Saints team in Week 12. Like, all you have to play for is bragging rights against your biggest rival. Like, this is what we talked about all week. Like, this game against the Falcons and Saints is as close as you get in like the NFL to like true, like clean old fashioned hate. Like that's as close as what you get to. And so the fact that both teams were going into this game not feeling really good about themselves, let's be completely honest and call a spade a spade. The fact that you go into this game and you come out of it with a win, like especially to do it in the way that I think they did it, particularly defensively, after a few performances defensively where against the Colts, against the Carolinas, where you saw a single player put up historical franchise numbers in back-to-back weeks. Like, this defense getting back on track, I think was, and I know we're going to get into the defensive performance more later in this show, but I thought that to me was like to see the confidence that this defense was playing with, I think helped everything else kind of like ripple off of that.
I absolutely agree. And, again, kind of the playoff picture is what it is at this point. But the rest of the season, like, to me, it's a little bit about, how Raheem Morris doesn't like to name an identity, right, in training camp. And kind of he wants, in his words, that to manifest on the field, right? You kind of build your identity on the field and it comes to life there. To me, it's kind of like, are the Falcons going to be able to forge a true identity that we feel good about and can invest in for the future over these next 6 games? Like, to me, that is really what is at stake here. And that does happen one game at a time. And when you look at kind of the injuries that are happening on the offensive side of the ball, obviously Michael Penix Jr. key among them, that is what makes it kind of exciting in a weird way, but like also not a weird way. The defense is the story, is really kind of the ones taking strides and like stepping forward, because that to me is kind of the identity that you can buy into for not just the rest of the season, but like hopefully this is the beginning of something truly special here in Atlanta.
Yeah, I think that when you look at this game and the four quarters of it, like the fact of the matter is that this defense over and over, time and time again, has found ways to keep this team in games and in positions to win games, even if they're not in good positions themselves, and i.e. field positions. And I think that when I look at what this defense has become in 2025, to your point of it being something that you can build on, like you look at the young pieces of this group, what they're doing, how they're playing, knowing that you're going to have people like Brandon Dorlus, Rukaroro, Jalen Walker, James Pierce Jr., Xavier Watts, like for the next few years. So regardless of what happens over the course of the 2025 season, those pieces are going to be who you are and who you are building around come 26, 27, 28.
Absolutely. I mean, that is why it was very encouraging again to see. And we should say it's the Saints, right? The Saints are 2-9. So we don't want to sit here and certainly have kind of like that same level of after the Bills game where we're like, everything was amazing and this is the ascension and they've arrived.
Right.
Like that,
we don't want to
wax, not this.
Right. We don't want to wax poetic about this defensive performance. I mean, we can talk about it in the scope, but I want people to hear us talking about it in the scope of like this game. Yes. And at the end, to your point about like, this was the Saints. This team has been on a 5-game losing streak. Like the odds of them making the playoffs are minuscule. Like we're not disregarding anything that has happened. We're kind of talking about this performance in the vacuum of they needed this win, they got this win, and they got it because the defense played very well.
Absolutely. Yep. This was an important win because at times it wasn't the prettiest win, I guess. Mm-hmm. And like that has been, the Falcons have played good games and then ended up losing them this year. It was nice to see them be able to play kind of a game not up to their very, very best and still win it fairly comfortably. I would say this was maybe the most comfortable win outside of Minnesota and maybe Washington that they've had this year, you know?
Right. Yeah. No, you're
I'm just naming the other two wins that weren't Buffalo, right? But
hey, whatever you got to do, man. Oh, man. But no, I really do. When I look at it in totality, I mean, we're going to talk about the offense too, but it is one of those things where it's not like this team didn't have opportunities to throw this game away either. Like, let's be real. Like,
that's true.
Right? Like, it's not, again, we can't wax poetic about the performance because if you were to look at the third quarter, wasn't good.
Well, we'll get to the third quarter, but that's our first quarter whistle. So we got the second quarter coming up first. Wow. Tori, how's that for a segue?
A real who's on first situation we've got going on, Will.
Man, I am in midseason form. Let's go. All right. So we talked a little bit about the defense, but now it's time for us to really kind of dig in and give them their flowers. And honestly, Tori, as I was kind of trying to think about the way for us yet again to talk about the defense, because this isn't a new thing, which is a great thing so far this season. But really, when we came into this year, right, all the talk, all the spotlight was on the offense. It was, man, this young core with Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson, Drake London, and Michael Penix Jr., what can they accomplish with kind of Michael Penix in a full year as a starter? And early on, the defense is what grabbed our attention, and we were wondering, is that a flash in the pan? Is that kind of what happened? But now, after these 4 games, like what they are doing feels real, feels sustainable, and I kind of just want to know, are you more excited about this defensive kind of young nucleus? And we can throw, Xavier Watts in there. And unfortunately, we don't know what's up with Billy Bowman, but I would add him too. Like this young group of defenders, Are you more excited kind of for them right now than maybe you even were at the beginning of the season for what this Falcons offense could be? Or is it still that group is what has your heart and your eye?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with that. And I think even looking at where things stand with the defense versus even offensively, like the conversations that you have to have about where the Falcons are within those two entities are actually quite different at this point in time, knowing that
Yep.
Michael Penix is hurt and could potentially be spanning a recovery time period into the beginning weeks of the 2026 season.
Yeah, it's
So
fair to say it's going to impact his preparation window for sure.
right. Yeah. And then you don't really know offensive line what's going to happen. You know, the Falcons have Caleb McGarry. He will be coming back in 2026. You obviously have Drake London that you would hopefully you would think try to get a long-term deal together for. You have Bijan Robinson coming back. Let's see what happens with Tyler Algier. But in terms of like the key pieces, like what we were saying before, that you build around, that you see moving forward, I feel more confident in the concrete examples of what this defense has given me in 2025 to feel good about them being on the right path moving forward. I think that even going back to something that we talked about probably on this podcast in the first few weeks of the season was I remember saying they're so much farther along than I thought they were.
Yeah.
Like I remember saying I think it had to be like week 2, honestly, after that
The Minnesota game, yeah.
Yeah, where I kind of remember being like, I was fully expecting the offense to start hotter than I was the defense because the defense had so many new faces, had a brand new coordinator in Jeff Ulbrich who's trying to do stuff a little bit different than what the previous regime was trying to do defensively. And so I just kind of assumed going into this year that defense was going to be a work in progress. Well, that work in progress arrived a lot sooner than what I thought. And so it changed my own expectations about the defense. And that's why the performances over the last few weeks, these down performances for this defense have been like, that's not who this defense is. Like, and I think that's where I land with this defense and why I do feel so confident about it moving forward.
Yeah, and I mean, when you look at just the guys who did contribute, at least in sacks, it's all of the names that they've drafted over the last 2 years, right? It's Brandon Dorlus, 1.5 sacks, James Pierce, 1.5 sacks. That the last sack was so pretty from him,
I
just
know.
classic, beat him around the edge, go track him down. Jalen Walker, another sack again, Ruka Roro. Like what Jalen Walker and James Pierce are doing, I believe, is unparalleled among rookies right now in the NFL. So like you just look at all of the names that we were talking about in the lead up to the draft and how much we were kind of going back and forth. Is it Mike Green? Is it, obviously Abdul Carter was in a class to himself, but like all of these different names that and to hit on these two guys again, to flip it where it genuinely feels as though this isn't like a flash in the pan kind of season that maybe you saw in 2016 with Vic Beasley, where that clearly was an outlier when you look at kind of his overall career. This feels sustainable. This feels like you've got two guys who are about to be household names. And then what Brandon Dorlus has done, capitalizing on a great training camp, Ruka Roro, to see him finish the game with that sack or get the last one of the group, like that was amazing to see. Do you feel like Jeff Ulbrich has said, he wants to get to kind of being able to rush 4? Do you feel like they're close to being able to do that because they've had such a high blitz rate all year long?
Yeah, I do. And I want to use Jalen Walker kind of as the case study. Like, I know right when they drafted Jalen Walker, I was so skeptical, and I was skeptical for a long time, even honestly back weeks ago, was still skeptical about the fact that the Falcons were going to have him play this very traditional edge rusher role. I mean, I questioned it all the time, and I kind of didn't believe it for a very long time. But I do think that he has morphed into this traditional edge rusher that can go and win a one-on-one. And I think you have to give credit where credit is due to Jalen Walker for being willing to do that and really putting the time and effort in while also kind of working through this groin injury. But also Jeff Ulbrich for having a vision, having a plan, and sticking to it, because that's sometimes what rookies need. They don't need to be everything all at once. They need to focus. And that's something that Jeff Ulbrich said from day one that he wanted for Jalen Walker. And I think he's achieved that.
That's the whistle, but a quick shameless plug. Go check out my Jalen Walker story for My Cause, My Cleats. It was awesome. He is representing arthrogryposis and his cousin Edwin. So go check that out. But that is our halftime whistle. So here is a great stat brought to you by Microsoft CoPilot, who is our presenting sponsor for Falcons Final Whistle and does a great job helping us compile this outline every single week. But we've been talking a lot about the defense, specifically the pass rush. The Falcons, 23 sacks over their last 4 games. They had another 5 today. That is their most in any 4-game stretch in franchise history. And the last time they were over 20 was season numero uno, baby. The very first season in Falcons franchise history, 1966. That's the last time they reached over 20 sacks in any 4-game stretch. So what a nice little bit of symmetry there here in their 60th season.
Yeah. Crazy stat right there. And too, I'll say this, like, it was good that they got the win. They got all these sacks. Like, you know, like that was, again, talking about crazy stats. Like one of the craziest stats I think I've ever heard is like for the first time in a Super Bowl era, a team had what, like over 18 sacks over a 3-game period, but lost all 3 of those games. And now we're sitting here talking about this team doing something that hasn't been done since the very first season of its inception. And they fortunately finally have a win to show for it. Like it just, again, it goes to show that sacks aren't everything, but it is nice to see that symmetry of like, they had all these sacks, they did something very special, and they got the win as well.
Yeah, it was truly kind of like the icing on the cake to be able to do it, because how many times are you kind of silver lining a stat like that?
Right.
Where it's like, oh man, yep, they needed that win, but look at this great thing that they accomplished in ultimately a loss. But no, we don't have to talk about any of that because they've got the win and their pass rush keeps rolling right along, which is what we're about to do. Wrapping up halftime by Microsoft Copilot. Let's move on to the third quarter. All right, Tori, you kind of right off the gates when we were chatting about what this outline could be, we got to talk about Kirk.
Yeah.
Here's your opportunity. Let's talk about Kirk Cousins leading the Atlanta Falcons offense.
Yeah, so I'm going to write more about this in my column after the game. But my main thing, and this is what I said going into this game, like you didn't need Kirk to be this like hero version of himself. You needed Kirk to be clean. You needed him to be efficient. And you needed him to not make really detrimental mistakes and get in the way of the game. And I will say, I don't think that Kirk Cousins got in the way of this game. And even when the Falcons were maybe not getting what they wanted offensively, I didn't put that on Kirk Cousins' back. I didn't put that on Kirk Cousins' shoulders. I think that he went out and he made plays. He did enough again, we're talking about this in kind of this like vacuum of the Falcons are in probably the lowest spot they have been in at the quarterback position from a feelings and emotion standpoint as probably the day that they sent Matt Ryan to the Indianapolis Colts. And what I mean by that is exactly what we talked about on the Friday 5 episode, where you have spent 2 years in quarterback purgatory. You finally feel like you have a good plan in place to secure your future and your current day quarterback situation. Those plans went to crap because Kirk Cousins played pretty bad towards the middle of last season. Michael Penix now has a surgery on deck for this coming week out in Los Angeles. It was just reported by Adam Schefter on Saturday that he will be undergoing that surgery very, very soon. You don't feel good about the quarterback position, and you needed this performance from Kirk Cousins to at least at the bare minimum make you feel content for the time being and that you're comfortable with Kirk Cousins operating within this offense. And I also think it was so obvious how much they were relying on play action, how much they were relying on going under center. And that has honestly sparked even more questions in my head about, okay, so they wanted to do that for Kirk Cousins. Raheem Morris said after the game that they were doing that to accommodate Kirk Cousins. So my question is like, why can't you, what was happening with Michael Penix that you didn't feel like you could do that? I'm glad, like, let's get into this because I do wonder if, all right, so Kirk Cousins is what, year 13 or 14 at this point? Like, obviously went to Michigan State where they had kind of a more pro style, I think, traditional offense there for a long time.
I just kind of think it's about the eras in which they came of age playing the quarterback position. I think Mike obviously kind of grew up in the 7-on-7 passing first style of football where there's a lot of shotgun, there's a lot of, a little spread it out, get the ball out of your hand fast, take shots downfield. And realistically, I just wonder if the number of reps are there and the level of comfort with on play action, especially under center, you're turning your back to the defense. Out of pistol, you don't necessarily have to do that. I mean, or you do, but it's for a blink of an eye because you're taking like a half step back and then pivoting back around. So I wonder if also when we look at this initial plan to begin with, it was kind of Kirk for at least one full year, if not two, right? And the upside was always going to be two. To me, maybe that is more time to really truly build Michael's comfort with some of what you hope this offense could be, and in going to him quicker. And obviously this is all speculation, but I'm just kind of like trying to walk everybody through my thoughts on it. Like going to him quicker, did they have to say, okay, what is Mike very comfortable with? We're going to go with that. It's a lot of pistol. It's a lot of shotgun, which I think Zach wants as well if we're looking back at week 1 of last year. So I gave you a lot, but I do think it is more about the quarterbacks than the offense.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. I think that something that I want to even look at, during this week as you move forward with Kirk Cousins is how much more were they deploying kind of this play action under center looks today through 4 quarters against the Saints versus the first 10 games of the season last year, because I think even that is more. I think that they were doing more today. And again, this is Will and I speculating based on what we were seeing today, but
we got to watch the tape,
right? Like it just felt like they were deploying that more than they ever have in the last 2 seasons. And I'm curious if that also went to show that maybe Kirk wasn't feeling comfortable in and of himself at the beginning of last year still. So like there are all these different things that I think are kind of like falling into this question I have about like play calling, what works, what works best with who, where did the Falcons go from here? Like there are a lot of pieces of this offense that I'm still very curious about and how it's going to evolve down the stretch here.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with that. I think that we will maybe potentially see a little bit of at least the Michael versus Kirk elements of like under center play action versus not, because they barely did any of that with MPJ. I wonder too, just to your point about last year, like, could that be the way and how they understood the weapons that they're working with? And today, being down Drake London, right? You may need to rely on some more of that misdirection and drawing the linebackers up. And they obviously wanted to kind of work over the middle of the field with Kyle Pitts a little bit. You need to create space for that. So it could have just been, we know Mike likes to go outside. You don't necessarily need play action for that because it impacts linebackers. That's our whistle. So we are going to keep it moving right along. And
it's a good case study for us to have moving forward. Let's put a pin in that conversation and see how it turns out in the coming weeks.
All right. Yeah. We need to come up with like a little snappy name.
Okay.
Like, maybe it's just like, no, that's dumb. All right. We'll come up with something. We'll come up with something better.
We'll come up with something.
We're leaving all of that in, though. People need to see my real-time genius at work. All right. So to kind of wrap things up here, because I think the main part of today was really the defense, getting that win and kicking that 5-game streak, and Kirk Cousins, and shout out to Darnell Mooney. Good to see you back, buddy. That was nice to see that connection once again. But the final 2 things that we wanted to get on, and it's kind of like one thing that worked and one thing you got to work on. That's the kicking game, and something that Tori has been on all season long. It's the third quarter offense and what's going on with that. So let's start with the third quarter offense. Okay.
Yeah. It's not good. Like, I think I don't know what else there is to say. For some reason, this offense is struggling coming out of halftime, whether it be they get the ball first or they're having to come from behind or whatever the case may be. Regardless of what the situation has been, third quarter has not been a place and a time where this offense has really shined at all. I'm trying to look up kind of what the stats are, because I was literally asking I've
got it in front of me. You want me to just...
No, I have it too. So, right. Okay. So the Saints in the first, this goes both ways. This is both defensive issues and offensive issues. I know we're talking about third quarter offense, but the defense has kind of had some slow starts coming out of halftime as well.
I think they're related.
I do too. And we'll get into this. So the Falcons have a negative 22-point differential coming out of half and third quarters this year. Coming into this game against the Saints, that was tied for the fifth lowest differential in the third quarter coming into today. What's interesting about that is you look at something that was even crazier looking at this third quarter. The Falcons had they ran three offensive plays. Three offensive plays in an entire
9 yards.
Quarter. Yeah. And meanwhile, the Saints had 95 total yards in the first half. They had 106 total yards in the third quarter alone. I think upwards of like 24 plays, maybe more than that in the third quarter. I don't know off the top of my head. I'm not looking at it right now.
Because they converted like multiple 3rd and 1s, 4th and 1. Like they just kind of kept this drive chugging right along.
Yeah, so it's to your point, it's all related. It all works off of each other. The defense kind of not being able to get off the field, the offense not able to string anything together in the third quarter. And I really do. That's one of those things where this game, they could have put this game on ice way earlier than when they did in the fourth quarter. Like if they would have come out offensively and put up points in that drive coming out of halftime.
Yep.
It's a different feeling of a game, whereas at the end of this third quarter, where they didn't do anything offensively, it was a one-score game going into that fourth quarter.
Yeah, I mean, you allowed back-to-back drives by the Saints of 15 plays, right? So that first drive for the Saints in the second half, 15 plays, 62 yards. You get them off the field at the 1 yard line.
I know.
So freaking loved that. I'll take that all day long. You know, as long as you're ahead in the game, which they were at the time, sure. Cool. Empty calories all day.
Yeah.
Then their second drive kind of spans the end of the third quarter because you got them down at the 1, but then again 9 yards and you're punting from your end zone. So the Saints turn right around 15 more plays, 50 yards, and they get a field goal. So like 30 plays for 3 points. That is such a testament, I do think, to the defense, because we talk a lot about the third quarter point margin, and that I do think has a lot to do with the Falcons offense just keeping the defense on the field and wearing them down and getting them tired. And you see kind of the bend, and then maybe there is a little bit of a break because they're just bending so much. But today they didn't. And I really feel like that allowed the offense to find its footing with that big play to Mooney.
Yeah, I mean, they needed it. Like, I think that you can't have a third quarter like that and not really get anything going. Again, if they would have had, that touchdown to Darnell Mooney from Drake London. What's Drake London doing here? From Kirk Cousins. Like, I think that was a moment where if the Falcons didn't put up points on that drive, then the Saints get the ball back. It's still a one-score game. They're moving the ball pretty well. Like, I mean, there were a lot of, if you can always play the if, ands, or whats game of what could have happened, like what maybe would have happened if you wouldn't have done this. But at the end of the day, like, that swing was ultimately what won the team this game.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of swings, how about the swing from one Zane Gonzalez on Sunday? I mean, he became the first Falcons kicker since Morton Anderson did it against these very Saints to kick 2 field goals of 54 yards or more. It's kind of hard to believe Matt Bryant never did that. But,
I know.
Man, I mean, he was... Yeah, I guess it didn't come down to like the field goal game, but again, just the psychology and the momentum of this game, he did so much, as much as the defense, I think, in just kind of keeping you in it.
100%. I mean, it's just nice. You know, I'm not going to feel like 100% on the kicking game for probably a while because, you know, you don't want to get
That's fair.
I'm still a bit jaded of what's been to this point, but I think what Zane Gonzalez did, 2 kicks beyond 50 yards, and it's heightened because of the fact that the Saints missed 2 kicks themselves.
Yeah.
So, you literally saw both sides of the coin, and the Falcons for a long time have been on the bad side of the coin. So it was really nice. Again, it goes back to the sacks thing. The fact that the Falcons had as many sacks as they did and won the game. The fact that they had a kicking game that saw two 50 plus yarders. I mean, it's just really nice to be able to talk about that kind of stuff because we haven't for so long.
Absolutely. Also, got to cover the kickoffs a little bit better.
Yes, yeah.
There we go. That's all we're going to say. Except for this, and Jared's going to kill me because we've been going long on podcast recently, and I feel bad for doing it again. But because I mentioned earlier Jeff Ulbrich wanting to be able to get pressure with only 4, I just saw this from Next Gen Stats, and I felt compelled. The Falcons defense blitzed at a season low rate today, 15.7%, and instead they generated 19 pressures and 5 sacks when sending 4 or fewer pass rushers. Tori, it's coming to fruition. The plan is coming alive. I love to see it.
It's so good. I mean, it's everything that Jeff Ulbrich said that he wanted months ago. Like, you know, like this is a domino that's been falling that he's wanted to see this defense do. And the fact that they were able to do it today is just one. Yes, it was against the Saints that have won 2 games this year, but you need a start. You need to show this defense that they could do it. And I think that's kind of what you wanted. Now you've done it. Do it again.
Now you've done it, do it again. This doesn't count as the 3rd straight game for the Falcons going into overtime, but we definitely went into overtime a little bit today. So we appreciate you guys sticking with us. For Tori McElhaney, I'm Will McFadden. We got Falcons Audible coming midweek. We got Friday 5 coming on Friday. And then we got another big game against the New York Jets, and you guys can find us after that one as well. So thank you all so much for listening. We will see you next time.